Hi. Somebody asked me how to get back out into the world, basically with complex PTSD. And of course, I'm going to answer this probably from a radically different angle than most people would assume I would say, or somebody would say, not me if you know me. But um, the idea of getting back out into the world is a tough one for me because I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm there in the way that people would probably be asking this question from. So, um, I am very much a part of this world, and you could probably see me as a person who, I'm bouncing all over town, I'm showing up on YouTube, I'm doing things in the world that might look like I exist in the outer world, right? But the truth is, my priority is that I exist now in my inner world. I do not partake in the social, like I'm not out every weekend with a bunch of friends. I'm living a quiet, simple writer's life. And that's me. I always say, like, if I could have it my way, I'd be a shaman living next to a river, and people when they needed me would come through, and I would be like, hey, let's pick these herbs and do these things. I am by heart a homebody, so long as that home has all of the resources I could need, right? So I am at home in myself right now, and I am home in my body right now. So my desire to go out in the outer world only comes from comparison, where I see that, oh, those people are doing that thing, and oh, those people have those friends, and oh, they're connected to these things. But um my desire for connection is quality over or quantity, right? So this question of how do I get back out into the world, I would ask it in a reverse sense, where it's how do I get back into my inner world? Because most of the people that are going, how do I get back out into the outer world? They've been pushed back into their inner world so far that it is daunting to come out. So any mammal that is ostracized from a social species finds it very hard to re-enter social systems after being a lone wolf. That's nature. There is nothing that we can do cognitively to override the reality of nature. So I think this question is often asked, and I've asked myself, is why can't I just be that person who has the capacity to be emotionally friends with everybody that I know and love, and go out and use my energy in the ways that people who are more of this world, that I think this question is being asked, how do I get back out into the world after kind of isolating? Well, my isolation doesn't feel like isolating. It feels like capital A alone for me. So I would rather answer this question and help you regain a sense of your interior world so that you can bring that out to the outer world. But most of the time, we're trying to, after complex PTSD, reach out to the outer world in a way that we're so far back in ourselves. It's so far to get to the outer world. And also, why would we want to do that? It's terrifying. Like, we're going to be electrocuted the second that we stepped to our own edges. And that is not what we want, right? It is safer to stay in than to be out in the outer world. But also, I think the work of creating from within, right now, I'm doing paint by numbers. Okay. You could call me insane. These images that I mean, maybe I'll show you what I'm creating, but like, they're freaking paint by numbers. It's elementary. Okay. But I have something called aphantasia. I do not have any visuals in my mind when I close my eyes. It is a black nothing, right? You feel like you're in the void. I feel like a ghost mall is in my mind because I can hear the chatter, but I can't see anything. And I'm like, where is it? Where am I in space, right? Aphantasia is a weird thing to live with because I didn't know that I had aphantasia until I was 40. I thought nobody had images in their head. I didn't even know this was a conversation, right? So I am doing paint by numbers, and because aphantasia for me, it also assists me in my job because I work over the phone, I work in the void, and it's called mind's eye blindness. Like a blind person, I feel, I can imagine things in my head by felt sense. So if you said, hey, I want you to imagine a beach. What I would experience on the inside is the stomp of footsteps, and I would feel it in my physical kinesthetic body, and I would hear sounds of the waves and the birds, and I would feel the ocean breeze moving through me. I would have no visuals whatsoever. And then I asked all my kids, I'm like, oh yeah, I look at the ocean every night when I'm going to bed. That's how I put myself to sleep. What? Mind blown, right? So right now, this is not something I knew about my interior world with all of the work that I've ever done. I didn't know this about myself. So right now, my way of getting back even more into my world in a sense of fullness instead of, oh, I have to get back into myself because the world is coming in at me and, oh, I'm so out of myself because I'm always in parts that are looking out and being hyper vigilant about what their temperature is instead of what my temperature is. Using paint by numbers for me is reestablishing a neural network that was never developed in me. Children are supposed to have this visual internal network when they're very young. I have seizures. I probably have brain injuries from said seizures. I never developed that part of myself. So right now, because I'm using the paint and I can feel the color as I'm visually looking at it with my eyes open, I'm starting to get glimpses when I close my eyes of color. I've never had that. And I'm not saying this is a tactic that's going to work for the rest of my life. I have no idea if it's possible to develop neural networks like this, but I am getting glimpses. And in other aspects of my life, we would call that Satori. Like, oh, okay, if you can get a glimpse that like that is the reality, it might be a reality that I can actually start to see visuals on the inside. So this is obviously like I'm saying this to you because I want you to understand, one, it's a metaphor, but two, that me creating something from myself as elementary as paint by numbers is me creating from myself rather than for the world. And when I was a kid, if I created anything, it would be bypass. Like I would be like, hang it on the fridge like other moms do. No. Put this bumper sticker that I did a good job on your car. No, right? I didn't exist in the world that I grew up in. So now, and maybe this is like how narcissists are created who come from actual trauma instead of the oversaturation. Who knows? But like now, I don't want to show myself to the outer world because, and in these kinds of ways that I think this question is being asked, like where we want the world to see us, I am creating for myself, and then I'm hanging these paintings in my house, and I am reflected in my home that I exist. I created something that the inside made an impact on the outside. So when I was a child, and when probably a lot of us were children, we didn't get to impact the world. The world impacted us. And we were supposed to sit there and suck it up, right? If we cried, it was met with shut up. If we were, whatever it was, talked, you're complaining, you were not, if you were like me, energetically allowed to have an impact. You weren't allowed to have a say. And even if you did have a say, it didn't matter, right? So there was no real reciprocity. So why would anybody want to enter the world when that's what it feels like? When your imagery, whether in a felt sense or real, is that when I leave this cocoon of my inner world, I'm going to be faced with a person who's very much like probably the parent that I fear most in the outer world, right? Because we think, oh, that's what's outside of me. And if I let that outside in the way that I let that parent so deeply into me, the outside's going to affect me so bad I'm never going to be able to recover. So, one, the question's awesome because you're brave to want to engage in the outer world. But um, that is the archetypal dynamic that's going on, right? Like I am probably going to be projecting the most dangerous and negative aspects of being out in the outer world because every time I extended myself like that, I would get slapped. Well, in my case, something as simple as paint by numbers is, oh, I painted that. I can hang that on the wall. I can look at that and I can know I exist. It doesn't even have to be good. It's just like I would for my own kids, right? So I am creating from my interior world. And it is elementary and it does not make me money. And I am doing it for me, from me, right? It is so I can see that I can produce and create something and I can exist and it's allowed, even if it's just like something that's hanging on the wall. It's like, oh, yes, I exist. I created that, right? And people might think that that's ridiculous, but in truth, it's been insanely healing for me, right? So I would also say that when we're considering going from the inner world to the outer world, we have to have a therapist or a coach or somebody who has a neutral professional stance. Because even with healers who tell me, let me just put it this way, I don't work with healers who tell me that they only get their messages from spirit, because spirit also to me is in human form. And if you have relational trauma, you don't get to heal. You can heal with and from and through your relationship with God, but you do not get to heal relational trauma through the invisible realm. It must be made manifest so that we have a witness, so that we can say, hey, I am in the outer world, right? I am your outer world, and I see your inner world, and I'm a safe space. And this is what your new relationship could be like with the outer world. But I think, and for me, for maybe years, I only would do shamanic work or theoretical spiritual work, and that is awesome, but it's also very dissociative in the sense that my work, in the sense of my personal work, has been, I needed to get embodied. I need to be in here. The first time I went to a shaman, she's like, I've never seen anything like it. You're literally, your feet are dangling from where your waist is. Like, you're not even close to the ground. I was so dissociated and so pissed off when she was like, hey, I want you to anchor yourself to the ground. And I was like, no way, this place is hell, right? I don't belong here. But the thing is, my friend Jane said to me one time, which was very, helpful for me, it's no accident that you're an earthling. Because it's always easy to be like, I don't belong here. I don't understand this. What's going on? And to say, like, I belong somewhere else in a different language with different beings that really understand. And maybe I'm that person for you. Like that dolphin song. Oh my God, this bitch speaks my language or whatever. But I am an earthling made of stardust, right? And as much as I could say, I'm not made for this place, well, I have to make this place. And it doesn't have to be this place among the people. It can be among the earth and the people that passes by and come through and that we meet along the way. That those kinds of connections, and it's very interesting because I didn't have that solid home-based connection. So everybody I would meet in my life, I would be like, we're best friends and I'm loyal to you till the end, no matter who you are, right? Every single person I would meet. And I don't do that anymore. I have this more like, hey, bye. Like, I see you and I love you and you're you and I'm me. Where I used to be like, oh my God, that's my person and I'm their person. So we have to be like this all the time, right? And I see it so much in my 9-year-old daughter and how young I have been, and also how wise she is, how old she is at the same time. But that tendency to be like, oh my God, we're on Earth together. Let's do it. We're here. We made it to the planet together. And we have to be BFFs the whole time instead of acknowledging, like, hey, and this is what I would say for you, the person who said, how do I get back in the world? Specifically you would realize you are already among the world. That every time you go to the store, every time you are reflected, that somebody looks at you, whether they look you in the eye, whatever it is, positive, negative, this is your world. And this year I'm taking, it's ironic that I'm like on, YouTube right now, but I'm taking as long as I possibly can. It's been a month so far off of social media because I want to go to the phase I never got in childhood, which is I'm going to actually explore my world, not the world. And you could look at me and be like, oh, that's so narcissistic of you. I've put a lot of work into the world, thinking I had to do something in order to be allowed in the world. Founded a charter school, founded a business, Sunday school teaching, like all of this thing. I put a lot of work into the outer world. But I've done that since I was 0 years old. So my orientation is reversing where it's like, oh, I'm going to actually offer that work to my inner world. And it's, again, going to be for me, not so that I can do enough to be allowed to exist in the world, but so that I can be enough to start to have my own soulful momentum to actually do me in the world instead of do the thing I think I'm supposed to be in the world. And for me right now, that looks like paint by numbers, right? But when I pick my kids up from school and I'm like, why is this person talking to me? I'm just trying to pick up my kid. I'm not trying to, like, why? Like, that's what it feels like all the time, right? And some days I acknowledge this is my world. I am a part of this world as much as I can resist it, as much as I might go, I don't really feel connected or close to anybody in this world. Everybody's a passerby. Well, aren't we all? Even us to ourselves, right? That doesn't take away the, hey, I see you. Doesn't mean I have to keep you. And when we can see that we are a part of the world and start to see instead of worrying about how we're seen, it's so much easier to be a part of the world because you recognize you already are. You're already doing the thing that you're going, how do I do this? You're already doing it. You just don't like how it feels, right? And it's scary, but you're already a part of the world. You're already doing your part in the world, right? But my assumption is you are wondering, how can you be yourself in the world? And again, one, I would say get a good therapist, do a course in miracles. I would say everybody who can interpret or understand my language, because I get, some people are like, I showed your video to this person. They said they didn't know what the hell this bitch was talking about. If you can understand my language, I would assume that God is saying that your work is to do a course in miracles, which has been the most transformative experience I've ever had in my life. And I'm doing it. This is my fifth time. This is my fifth year. Doing it, even though I read the teacher's manual like 3 times before I started actually doing the work, because that's how my brain works. Do a course in miracles, because it's going to dismantle your interior and reconstruct a solid, truthful, soulful sense of your position in the world. And then you don't vie so much for position or for understanding what's going on here. What is my position? What does this person want from me? I'm confused. When you are in your position, which A Course in Miracles will help you do, along with getting a therapist, along with changing your mindset about, one, being an earthling, two, creating truly, and I know when money isn't involved, it's so complicated, but my priority is like, dude, my sanity is a currency. My attention is a currency. I believe money follows that, and I believe that I will be supported. I don't need to chase money to make me bajillions. I believe that I will be supported in my kingdom assignment if I create for me and from me instead of for the world what I expect that they think I should offer them from me, right? So, and another thing too is like, I just worked with somebody the other day that was a real fun experience because she reoriented an aspect of herself that often is gauging the temperature of everybody else. And I have done this, I just haven't been aware that I've done this in my own psyche. And it came like this huge for her, that we kind of assigned this position to start to interpret her inner environment instead of be hyper vigilant about the outer environment. Because especially if you're a woman, the inner environment, especially a woman with ADD, right? It's like the inner environment fluctuates often, whether it's your period, your hormones, your mood, your thoughts. It's like bing, bing. And there's some buffer part of self that can stay in the middle of all of that and go, hey, you shifted. Instead of, hey, that person shifted. Now we have to figure out what to do. We have to shift because they shifted, right? The orientation of this part that was always looking out is looking in now for her and going, oh, well, this is the hope and the assignment now. Instead of gauging the temperature of everybody outside, it is tasked in a desirous way, that's what it wants, to be looking on the interior for changes and for buffering between aspects of self instead of buffering self from others, right? So, yeah, when you get into your interior world and you can fill it and nourish it and plant seeds in it, you will know that you are already a part of the world. Like, please, everybody, please, I want to be buried under a tree, and that's it, just right in the ground. under a tree and I want to become part of that tree because that's what I am. And that's what you are. But we often ask this question of social systems. How do I get back into the world of like politics, life, like business, work, interfacing with people every single day? It's so overwhelming, right? But the chaos of controlled growth that is provided by God and not by us, it's so grounding to just be inside of it and know you are already a part of it. You just feel set apart from it. You are an earthling. You are of this world. You are out in the world, even if you feel isolated. You exist in the world. Find ways to show yourself that instead of show the world that. And all of a sudden, you won't have to ask this question. I hope this makes sense.